Good morning. I'm Cynthia Hutchison with Automation Alley, and I welcome you to, I believe this is episode 8 of the new normal. We're going to continue to talk about the new normal until it becomes old hat, and we can talk about something different. For those of you, many of you are working from home today, and for those of you who are working in an office, you probably have some concerns and anxieties prior to showing up at that office or some thoughts during the day. So we are going to talk today with Jack Van Teen. He's the Vice President leader for the North American market, US and Canada at Kelly. Kelly is a global leader in connecting people to companies who need their skills. And today we're going to talk about something we have not covered yet in this series. We're really going to be talking about the human side of COVID-19. Good morning, Jack. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Cynthia. Happy to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And you and I talked a little bit about this. This is a different perspective. We've talked a great deal about, how to prepare your facility, how to clean your facility, different techniques, different apps, how to do contact tracing, but we have not yet talked about this. So we've talked about things to have the technology in place to make the environment as safe as possible. What we have not talked about is how this transforms entire business and how it impacts talent management. So we know that 2 out of 3 workers are uncomfortable coming back to work. At least we've heard that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing and how we can help them get through this terribly stressful time in their careers?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great place to start. Employers absolutely need to understand that people are uncomfortable, and it's a real and valid uncomfortableness that they have. And the employers also need to understand that people are concerned about their safety. They're also concerned about lack of daycare. They're getting enhanced unemployment benefits now, which in many cases is allowing people to make more money staying home than actually working. And when you can stay home and be safer at home than you are at work, you can take care of your kids if you have them and make more money. That's a fairly compelling reason for that population to stay home. The impact that's having, those 3 things that I mentioned, and there's a couple more, is it's decreasing the hiring pools, and it extends the timeline to actually get talent onboarded. So all this means that companies need to be extra vigilant in implementing their safety protocols, offering flexible work schedules, communicating with their employees all that they're doing to make them feel more comfortable. And it all starts with trust. Employee needs to trust their employer and need to understand what their employer is doing to keep them safe. Things like doing temperature screening, contact tracing, no touch time clocks, more space for people to eat their lunch in the offices, and where you have office workers, maybe going to an A/B schedule or more job sharing. But number 1 is trust. The second one is employers need to understand that the employee is now in the driver's seat as far as how they want to do their work. It's done. There needs to be this push outside of the 8 to 5 world, because some people work more effectively at different hours of the day. And the quicker an employer understands that, the quicker they're on the path to a solution. And then I think the third thing is rethinking talent management in totality. And that was true before COVID, and now it's more evident than ever in the middle of COVID. Well, I don't know if we're in the middle, at the beginning. I know we're not at the end. Just rethinking that whole thing about talent management. So what's your pipeline look like? What's your skill set of your existing workforce look like? You and I have had this conversation many times that you cannot ignore your existing workforce when it comes to upskilling, reskilling, and training and mentoring them, because there just aren't enough other people that have the skills that you need. So look to your own employee base first. So that's the 3 things I would tell employers.
It's really fascinating, because as you're saying that, I know on my staff we've got people who are uncomfortable. Some who don't want to come back. The childcare issue is huge. And you and I have also talked in the past about the flexibility is so critical. So when I've talked with people about the technology required to go back to manufacturing, we at Automation, we talk about Industry 4.0, overlaying this digital mindset onto your physical facility. We talk about it all the time. And I have found that the biggest barrier really to making some of those transformations had been inertia. And COVID took away the inertia, because now to reopen your factory, you need to check a whole lot of boxes that require some of that very technology we've talked about in the past. Similarly, when we've talked about the need to look at talent differently, everybody wants the, the IT specialist, the engineer, somebody to come right out of school and 3 years experience somewhere else and now, ready to go. But that isn't a reality. So we have to look at our people differently, and flexibility is probably a huge part of that. When I look at the people who are here, who have young children at home, they're now, caretaking, but also teaching their children. They're doing all these things they didn't do. So I guess if they're working from, 9 in the morning until 2, and then they're not working from 2 till 6, and then they're back in from 6 to 10 at night, and they're getting their work done, that's the kind of thing. Is that what we need to start to be okay with?
Yeah, I think we need to explore those options. And obviously this is all dependent on what you're doing, whether you need to, physically be answering an email or a text or an IM, or whether you just have a workload that you need to process and pass along to the next person. So there's certainly no, one solution fits all, but just the very act of thinking about it as an employer, I think shows a lot of innovation and forward thinking, and sharing those types of thoughts with your employees is going to make them understand that you have their best interests at heart.
So what I know, what's at risk if we don't get this right? Like what happens if we don't get this right now? I know I feel like Michigan is at an inflection point right now where we started reopening and now we're seeing some shuttering of things, and that spills over into the employment arena and probably into that talent crisis. So what is the risk here?
Yeah, so, it starts with employee morale and them feeling safe at work. We knew early on that how companies were going to act and demonstrate care and concern for their employees was going to impact how people chose where they were going to work on the side of COVID. So it's the employee morale, it's the company's brand. If a company doesn't get this right, they are going to hurt their brand. We've seen cases, one of the interesting things about us and what we do for a living is we literally have tens of thousands of customers across the globe. We put an emergency management team together in early January because of our locations in Asia, were alerted as to what was going on. So we were way out in front of the preparation for it. Because of so we were on it early with an emergency management team. Because we have so many customers, we see all types of different actions and reactions to what's going on. Where a customer has a poor relationship with their employees, we've seen cases where because the workers didn't feel safe, they had one positive COVID, and the next day half of the plant didn't show up for work because they were scared, because they didn't understand and didn't witness how their employer was trying to keep them safe. So you have to start there. And that's what happens when you get it wrong and you don't address up front what your safety protocols are, what your core values are as far as your relationship with your employees. And if you don't express empathy in every conversation that you have with them, you're not doing all you could to move forward in a positive fashion.
So you're helping the employees feel safe and secure, and it is brand building at the same time, which is critical post-COVID, or when the talent shortage continues and represents itself. You want to have the brand that shows that you're the company that took care of their employees.
Absolutely.
I want to remind people, I always forget to tell anybody, you're welcome to ask questions because Jack is with us until 9:30 today. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I tend to run over that because we have so much to talk about, but we'll fit you in. So, you referenced the the unemployment compensation and how that's impacted. And it's surprising to me. I would think that there are so many people unemployed now that they would be actively looking for work. But I guess there's a naivety in me in this that thinks that they would rather have a long-term job than a short-term stipend. But am I missing something there?
Well, so you're certainly not alone. You know, at the risk of making a huge generalization, which is not what I'm trying to do, what we talk about with our clients is that the employee labor pool that is positively impacted by the extra $600 a week in unemployment insurance, that employee pool may not view them making money or their job as their career. They are typically looking for what's in my paycheck every single Friday. So when we first started experiencing extreme labor shortages exacerbated by the unemployment insurance enhancement, July 31st looked like it was forever away, especially to these folks. So they weren't as concerned. Now, the good news. We've had some very positive jobs reports numbers both in May and June. So that's a huge bolster to everybody. July 31st is getting closer and closer. And don't know yet whether that unemployment benefit is going to be extended, but decision time is getting closer. And that's created enhanced interest by people to come back to work because they can now see July 31st. And we've been counseling our talent that there is going to be a job shortage to a certain extent, because not only are they going to, as they participate in the talent pool, diminish the number of jobs per person looking for a job, but entertainment, food, beverage being so uncertain going forward, the people that typically had those jobs are now going to start entering the industries that these other workers have been sitting on the sidelines for. So enhanced competition for roles, that's good for the membership of Automation Alley. It's good for all of our clients. And then people, finally realizing that they need to make a choice here pretty quick and jump back in maybe a little bit early. So it's good news.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, I think of it in one way. So essentially August 1st, and I guess it feels so short-sighted to me, but so August 1st, people are going to look at their paycheck. It's all going to be back to not enough to live on. And that's going to be the glut. So we're going to compensate for this shortage time, most likely with a glut, and then more people competing for each job that's available. Not just more than there were in July, but more than there would have been had none of this happened, because there are going to be fewer jobs and some of those service sectors are really going to be negatively impacted.
You got it. Yep, we're going to see that big time in August.
The other thing because you referenced China. I don't know why I put notes up here because I don't use them at all. But you referenced China, and I tend to forget. For those of you who don't know, Kellys headquarters is down the street from us, so we see them all the time. So I forget how global you are. So are you learning from other countries? Because I've got friends who live all over the world, and there are countries that are essentially kind of back to somewhat normal because they've managed this differently. What are you learning? And you want to name a favorite country, or you don't have to do that, but what are you learning from others?
We sure are learning from other countries. We have quite the command center that our emergency management team operates out of, and they have a global team. It's not just out of our headquarters in Troy, Michigan, but we have teammates that participate on the emergency management team all over the world, watching who's doing what, how things are getting better, what can we apply, and then applying them to the appropriate spots inside our own company. People might wonder why we have such an extensive emergency management operation. We have more than 8,000 FTEs around the world, full-time people, and we payroll over 500,000 Kelly temporary workers around the world every single week. We have offices all over the place. So we need to be, really good at what we do to keep people safe. And we communicate constantly, which is always something that's great to do But that's, you said you kind of forgot how big we are in our spread. That's why we invested the resources to keep our own employees safe, and we share that with our clients as well, those best practices.
That's important. The other thing I was going to ask you, I know you have some strategies on how to do the best with what you've got. So in other words, if people are laid off and you're hoping they come back, are you maintaining contact with them? And if so, explain the thought behind that and whether or not everybody should do it or people should consider that.
Yeah, the more you can communicate with not only your existing employees, but those that you unfortunately had to lay off for a period of time, it's a branding exercise for you because you're staying in contact. You have put them in a tough position, but you're still there for them, expressing empathy, and that really lands with people. And the goal is you want them to return to work. So you want them to feel that you haven't forgotten them just because they're not actually performing work for you. And one of the ways that we've done it, and we've encouraged clients to do that, is to create an online community with those folks. That's purely optional if they join. We do it with our full-time employees as well. And we just have, coffee together, or we'll have everybody brings their lunch, and there's nothing, there's no agenda, but it's just chatting with people and understanding what they're going through. And as a leader, I gather the group, and then I don't say too much. I let the conversation happen organically, and we have just, people have raved about that. And if I could share a client example with one of our largest customers in the manufacturing industry, we were hosting these engagement sessions with the Kelly temporary employees that were laid off. When it came time to go back to work, they had a 97% show up rate on the first day.
Oh my.
It's unbelievable. But it was because our client and Kelly, we got together and said, how can we keep these people engaged, because we know we need them. And I'll tell you, the brand of this particular customer has skyrocketed among these folks. And it's not 97% of a small number, it's 97% of a huge number of Kelly temps that went back.
Oh, congratulations. That is a great story. It reminds me, as we're talking about this, I heard a few years ago, and it was a former president of Kelly speaking, and he talked about one of the untapped resources for many employers is people who have left the company. And there was like an audible gasp in the audience, they left me. I'm not going to, that's not who I want to talk to. And he talked specifically about sometimes people leave your company, and I know this is not a COVID thing, they leave your company to get a new skill, to have more opportunity, and they may go from a small company to a large company because they wanted that higher opportunity. And then after they're the large company for a while, they miss some things about that small company, and they've acquired new skills, and they're ideal to bring back. So are you working with people, encouraging people who are laid off to add to their skill set, to be developing constant skill growth?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no better time, especially if you're laid off. There's no better time than to really take stock of your career. I'll go one step further than just training. We encourage people to do some self-reflection and really understand what's their purpose. What type of business outcomes do they want to be involved in? Do they want to build something? Do they want to create something? Do they want to be in support of something greater? When people can find out what brings them joy and then map those to a job, satisfaction goes through the roof. The person's efficiency and effectiveness goes through the roof. So it's a great time to do that. What's my purpose? What do I want to be involved in versus just maybe going back to the job that they had before that wasn't, scratching the itch that they had. So I would absolutely start there. And then if you find yourself with a skills gap where you want to go, then you seek out the training that you need. in order to increase your skills to be where you want to be. And if you're very comfortable with where you're at in your job, go out and learn anyway. Having a learning orientation and making sure your supervisors know that you have a learning orientation makes you a great candidate to do a new job because they know you want to learn. Not everybody does. So if you want to learn, make it known that you want to learn.
It's one of those, we have a tendency, most of us do, I should say I do too, think that people think in some ways like I do. And if you're aspirational, you're kind of baffled that somebody's not, or if you always want to learn, you're kind of baffled by it. So you need to remember that it isn't everybody's thing, but for those who want that. Now, when you reference the, knowing your skill set, do you have a tool that people use? And again, for your direct employees, I know you've got a lot of tools to use, but what do you recommend people do to find out what their strengths are, what their passion is? How do they get to that?
Yeah, so, we can certainly help people through that process. We do have a lot of online applications available to take people through that. But I would tell folks there's nothing better than just some self-introspection about what do you like to be a part of? And you got to think of it again in business outcomes or process outcomes versus just a job. And you come out the other side of it really having a better sense of balance for who you are.
So I was going to talk to you a little bit about why at this particular time, why are we talking about talent retention when it still feels like people are going to be drifting away? You're going to be having fewer employees. I think you're more hopeful than that. You don't think we're going to be winnowing down forever.
Right. Well, crises expose strengths that you have and gaps that you have. So the robustness of your talent retention processes and your talent management processes tested during this time. So it's very important as we move forward to keep the employees that you have, make sure they're skilled, make sure you're providing the flexibility that they require, whatever that is, work schedules, remote work, retraining opportunities, getting to know them as a person and knowing that they have a life outside of work. Especially as our worker age lowers and lowers, we know that the younger folks want different things out of their job. They want to work to live instead of live to work. Your goal as an employer should be to understand that somebody's going to have 8 jobs in their career on average. You just want all 8 of those jobs to be with you. And that means you should have an internal mobility as a core value, and moving people around within your organization. That'll scratch their itch. That'll get them learning. That'll make them more innovative if they can learn more about the business that you're in. And that's a hard thing for employers to understand, especially if they don't have robust human resources departments and employee advocacy groups and performance management processes. You don't understand those things when you don't practice those things.
What are some resources we can look at? Because we don't have a robust human resource department. I look at that in terms of, what do you recommend for small companies under 50 people? Is that about a threshold at which they begin to even have a human resource manager?
Yeah, well, at 50 employees, if you do have somebody that has a title of human resources, they probably do 25 different things just because
right.
That's the necessity at that side. So they're much more of a generalist with a focus. So if there isn't that ability inside your company, I would do 2 things. We as managers and leaders within an organization need to be more multifaceted than we have been in the past. Mm-hmm. So if I just look at a typical, whether it's a manufacturing person or a finance person or, just a general operations person, they tend to get really good at what they do on a day-to-day basis. But we really need those folks to be more understanding of how to deliver empathy to people, how to have a professional relationship with their employees, and teach themselves how to do that, and have a support structure within a company from the leadership level that supports a more well-rounded manager and supervisor. So I think that's number one. I think the self-help there is always tremendous. And then if you're not quite there yet and you need someone to get there, there's companies like Kelly and a lot of other of us that provide those services to customers all the time. We can help. And we've done it a bunch, and like I said, we've seen so many customers, thousands, tens of thousands of customers. So we have a really wide berth of knowledge and can apply the appropriate best practices to someone looking for some help.
You've used the word empathy many times, and I know that's an important thing to you. And I think that's really what we're getting down to, is that, whether it's childcare or flexible hours or not wanting to drive or not wanting to go into a building, the more empathy we can have and try to see ourselves in that person's situation, the stronger our recovery will be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially now, Cynthia, as we're asking people to return to offices, we're starting to do that now. First thing you have to realize is that people have been hunkered down we're going on 4 months now. So they've defined their own new normal in their house, their personal relationships with their families. So understanding that everyone has their own definition of the new normal is a start for an employer asking somebody to come back to work. And the realization that we're really asking somebody to relinquish control. I think it's not a far stretch that we all feel pretty much in control when we're in our homes. And that diminishes greatly when we step outside. So having that acknowledgement by an employer that we're asking somebody to some control is critically important. And, statistically speaking, that 100 employees at your company, at least one of your employees has lost somebody to COVID-19. They have a family member in financial crisis. They're suffering from increased anxiety and depression. They could be struggling with addiction, and they may have been quarantined with an abuser for that period of time. And if you're looking forward to returning to work, your employees are more likely to be fatigued and fragile. And that's why I do say talk about empathy, because I think it's the most important thing we can do. And the realization that folks are going through all that stuff. Self-introspection as a supervisor is certainly helpful, because we all had anxieties in the last 4 months. We wouldn't be human if we didn't. We've had to address them, whether we live alone. And there's, the other one, that there's a lot of people who live alone, and that person gets affected in a much different way than a husband and wife that are empty nesters, young newlyweds that have all kinds of little kids running around, so that's something different right from the get-go.
Jack, I know that Kelly has launched a new return to work playbook. Is that something, it's really devoted to this very thing, to discussing culture. Is that something people have access to? Can they have access to that document if they reach out to you or me?
Yeah, I'll give you the website. It's that'swhatkellydoes.com.
That'swhatkellydoes.com. I love it.
That's what kellydoes.com. It's redefining work. It's got some very simple, easy things to both understand and implement. And they can always, call me directly if they want to ask questions about that. I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jack, for sharing this time with us today. It's always delightful to see you, and you offer great insights. And I really have always enjoyed. You've got a different way of looking at things, and you represent the Kelly way in a really powerful venue. So thank you very much. It's great to hear from you, and I look forward to another chat very soon.
Well, thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say. I'm always happy to support Automation Alley, and I thoroughly enjoy our conversations as well. So thanks.
All right. Have a great day.
All right. Bye, Cynthia.